Welcome back to the next edition of the Celsior restoration project. And in today's video, what we're going to be doing is running a bit of a science experiment. So if you've watched my old videos, you know that this car has RSR lowering springs on it. And what I want to do is return this to OEM factory fresh in basically every way possible. So what I did was go ahead and buy some used struts. This one's the rear, and this one is the front. These are the OEM front and rear struts. So I wanted the springs back to try to restore this car. So what we're gonna do today is simply swap on these used struts and see how they feel. But we're not just here to feel how a used part might behave. So what I'm going to do is I have brand new KYB shocks for all the way around. This is the OE manufacturer. So I have these, and eventually we're gonna swap these on. But the main objective here is to feel how this car improves incrementally. So I wanna do just the shocks and struts, get that back to OEM and see how that feels. And next week, when all of the front suspension pieces show up, we're gonna do the entire front suspension overhaul and see how that feels. I have control arms, ball joints, the lower suspension arms, the end links, the end link bushings, all of that good stuff, and the entire front end is going to get changed with brand new OEM parts. So I'm super excited about that. But today we're gonna focus on the springs and the shocks. I bought the OE shocks off Rock Auto, so of course got to get the magnet, and this is the coolest one I've ever seen. Shout out Kara's VW. NASCAR style. I don't think I get a job. This is always such a funny perspective when a car has no wheels and it's on jack stands like this. It just looks so pitiful and hilarious. So as you saw, I had to use the ramps to then get the jack under to get it on jack stands and off the ramps, but that's because this car is so low, the jack doesn't fit under there. It's so silly because my E46 is lowered and I can't do it, so I have to drive it up on pieces of wood for the exact same reason. So it's just funny that this car that's supposed to have just a beautiful ride and not be slammed like it is, you have that problem. So here's another look at our front suspension setup. So we have these RSR springs on what appear to be factory shocks. Can't really tell, but this is actually going to be fairly straightforward, I believe, because in the air suspension model, you have to take off like the whole control arm and I think quite a few other components to actually get the strut out. But I believe we're gonna be able to just loosen this at the top, get the big bolt down there on the bottom, and swap this out, and it'll be fairly straightforward. The other thing that's actually really, really sick is that we have the new control arms coming. It's gonna have a new ball joint there and new bushings on either side. And I thought these were gonna be cam bolts, but the upper control arms are not cam bolts. It's actually so awesome. We still have a lot of other cam bolts to deal with, like this one here, as you can see, but man, look at how roasted that bushing is. It's sideways. I cannot wait to get that swapped. That's gonna make such a big difference. Then what other cam bolts do we have? That one here, this lower control arm definitely is one. So those won't be too bad because you can get to them fairly straightforward. And then I don't think any of those are cam bolts. Nope, all good there. So let's go ahead and see if we can get this strut assembly out fairly easily. Do we suppose these are 19s? I certainly hope so. Oh yeah, baby, easy clap, 19. Wow, I spoke too soon. The actual nut side of it is a 17. That's really interesting. Let's go ahead and zip this bad boy off. All right, so now let's go ahead and get these top bolts off. These are just gonna be a 14 millimeter. So if we take a look, we can kind of already see that our strut is falling out. Now all the pressure is going to be on this lower bolt, so I need to get the jack under here to kind of relieve that pressure, get the bolt out, and man, this actually is not taking that long. It's so much easier. Did I just jinx it? I think I did. Ow! Oh, I don't know if you saw that. That sucked. That was very unpleasant. Oh. So unfortunately, it looks like I was wrong, and this whole strut can't come out without popping the ball joint here on the knuckle so that the knuckle can come out some, because the strut just butts up against the knuckle and then there's just nowhere else for it to go. The threads are still sticking out the top and there's just no space for this to go down here, unfortunately. There we go. Easy. Alrighty. So let's see if we can get lucky and this ball joint just pops loose. Gonna give it some light taps. Let's see if we get lucky. Well, I didn't anticipate needing to use this so soon, but I did buy this hydraulic ball joint separator on Amazon. It was kind of expensive. It was about 80 bucks, but I saw M539 Restorations use this and it seems like it just makes it so much easier. So we're gonna go ahead and give this a go. So this thing actually looks pretty epic. I had to do it upside down just because of the way this works, but it looks like all I have to do is just tighten this big thread right here, and it just kind of holds the separator in place, and then I get a small wrench and turn up here. That's gonna move this silver hydraulic piston, and it's gonna help me pop this joint. So let's go ahead and get rocking. So that top one just takes a little 12. Let's go ahead and just start spinning this bad boy. And hopefully I'm doing that the right way. Yeah, definitely. You can see that piston just ever so slightly starting to separate. Come on now. It's gonna scare me when it pops. Wow. There it goes. Woohoo! Oh my gosh. That would have been a massive pain without this thing. For me, these kinds of tools are just worth every single penny. It's like, even though this is $80, I had to turn this thread a couple of times and it popped the ball joint. Like, that's just so worth it, rather than you could sit here and beat on this thing for an hour, get a bigger hammer, and it just still doesn't work. But this thing just, in one swift go, bam! Okay, so now what we should be able to do is just go ahead and get this ball joint nut, castle nut, the rest of the way off. And then as we can see, our control arm is now separated. It's broken loose from the knuckle. We can pull that forward and get the strut out. Yeah, baby, look at that. The strut just fell out immediately and smashed my finger in the process. That was dope. Oh, now we have a brake line. I'm in a precarious spot here, boys. Gotta kind of put this back together for a second. Yeah, this is not ideal. If I let this go, how much do I have before I start getting pressure on that brake line? Pretty much none. Or is that my wheel speed sensor? I think that maybe the brake pad wear sensor or the wheel speed sensor, but either way, not ideal. Oh, you need 3 hands for this. Or to be smart and do it a different way. There we go, making progress. So it seems like the way that this wants to come out is gonna be underneath this brake line and below the tie rod. So, gotta get this out on that side of the tie rod. There we go. That was not very pleasant, but this is working. Oh yeah, baby, oh, she's out. Ooh. Okay, so our RSR strut is out. That's there on the left side, and then the right one is the used OEM one. It's really interesting because I tried to get them as close as I could, within reason. Obviously there's a little bit of a difference there, but nearly identical. And you can see that the RSR springs just have a much tighter coil, like more akin to a coilover setup. But overall, I mean, they're very similar in terms of their length. So I'm curious how much this is going to do for the actual ride height, and then of course just for our comfort. And now the thing is, our used one on this side came off of a 127,000 mile LS400. I have no idea its condition. It looks okay, but that bushing doesn't look the best. Let's actually compare these bushings to our new one. So there is the new front strut on the right side. And the bushings are actually really interesting. So this one has less meat to it. It's got one of these little nubs that kind of sticks up off of it. And then there's the factory one, and then the used one off of the lowering spring strut. So that one looks a little bit blown out because that top portion is more pushed out than the other side. So I assume there's a lot of, like, you know, twisting pressure on this. And that is probably part of the reason why that big bushing right there is so roasted and sideways. So this is gonna be really good. I'm gonna go ahead and get this middle one put on, which is our used OEM strut, And then next time, when we have all the other new suspension components, this strut is going to get matched with this spring. And it looks like I'll be able to reuse one of these two, what are they called? Bellows. And then I'll probably just reuse the top hats. I was really bummed to find that the top hats from KYB have super poor reviews, even though they're supposedly OEM. So we're just gonna send it with these, and they're not that expensive, but them having such poor reviews, I was like, let's just see how this one compares, and we'll pull it off and see if it's bad. And if we need to pause and get a new part at that time, we will. Safely out of the way now. Does this pop up and over the control arm? Yeah, it sure does. Okay. Probably don't even need to do that, but I guess we will. We'll just make that nice and dangly, like so. We're just gonna put the weight on the ball joint there. Looks like we are. Let's see if I can put this kind of somewhere else that doesn't strain that brake line so much. Maybe if I just kind of hold it like this, I might be able to just slot the strut right in here and get it in there. Let's give that a go. Let's make sure not to put the RSR one back in. That would suck. I think I'm just gonna have to let this knuckle dangle a bit. We're gonna be replacing that ball joint anyway, so who cares? Not me. What am I stuck on? Oh, that damn brake line. Yeah, baby, almost there. Woo! Oh. All right, we're at a stopping place now. Time for a little bit of dangling. I tried to prevent it as much as I can, but just too much dangling to be had. And then it looks like we gotta flip this all the way around because otherwise the bolt holes don't line up. There we go. Okay, almost there. Let's get that bottom bolt back in. It's not lined up even close. So instead of the bottom bolt, let's get the top bolts put back in. Okay, so the top bolts are back in now. At least our whole assembly is not going to come careening down on us. So let's get this back in place for a second. I think I just want to go ahead and get this castle nut back on temporarily so that everything is kind of held in place and not being overly strained. I'm just going to try to get a little screwdriver or a pry bar in there and kind of lift this up a little bit. I might have to get the jack under here to kind of compress it and give me an opportunity to push the spring. Really, we're only off by about that much to get that big bolt in on the bottom of the shock. Let's see if we can actually send the bolt through. Not quite, but I bet it's close. Yep. That's all it took, boys. Boom. Okay. This ball joint back tight again. All right. Let's bust out our auto crap cotter pins. And then we'll go ahead and get the bottom shock bolt. For those of you screaming at your screens, I just realized this has got to be torqued, so I'm going to fix that. All right, so let's go ahead and get our recently replaced cotter pin out again and throw this one in the garbage. Looks like this bolt here is 65 foot-pounds, and then the big suspension bolt on the bottom is 106, so not too bad. Got my Harbor Freight click torque wrench at 65, so we're gonna go ahead and get this guy. There we go. Hopefully we have a cotter pin hole lined up. Yep, it looks like we do. That's perfect. And then we'll just lightly tap this in. Perfect. Cotter pin done, properly torqued to spec. Now let's do that lower bolt. All right, torque spec 105, I think it's 106, but got it to 105 here. And hopefully I don't punch something here. All right, boom, baby. So evidently a couple ugga-duggas on the impact gets us pretty close. Last piece here is just these top suspension bolts. These are just 20 foot-pounds, nothing crazy. This one doesn't have a super loud, satisfying click, but it definitely does click. You just gotta more or less feel it. There we go. Double check, yep. And we are good. Awesome. So those are now good to go as well. Okay, so let's recheck our work. We undid that ball joint, we torqued it, new cotter pin. Our OEM strut is in, bottom bolt is torqued down. We got our bolts back for our kind of wire assembly here. So this driver's side is good to go. Awesome. I'm gonna spare you the details of watching this other side. So by the time I snap my fingers, we will be pretty much done here. And just like I said, there is the OEM strut in the car. Everything is torqued, new cotter pin in, all the bolts are properly torqued, everything's good up top here. So we have 2 of the 4 corners done. So now onto the back, which is not going to be particularly fun because you have to take out the back seat cushion and a bunch of this stuff because the strut mount is up there. Fun. Part of me is like, I want to drive it now, but I also don't want to half-ass this. I want to get all 4 corners and then we'll go drive it. Ah. No. Oh, it's even worse than last time. No. I am definitely not getting hired by a NASCAR team. Remember how silly I mentioned it was when there's no front wheels? It's also even funnier when it's on jack stands with no wheels on any corner. All right, so here we are inside the rear suspension, and I just wanted to take another gander now that I've ordered all these rear suspension components. So I got this bar, that one's from the dealer. This one here, I managed to get from Amayama. They did not have control arms, so I had to order that from the dealer. And then all the in-links and stuff like that. But anyway, I am really curious about, am I going to be able to get this strut out without some major headache here? How do I even get to this bolt joint? Is that up underneath there? Oh yeah, I guess it is. My fingers are kind of up in there. That's crazy. That seems like it could be a massive pain in the booty hole. So, I don't know if I even want to do this yet, to be honest. Okay, so I looked it up, and apparently all you got to do to get the strut out by itself is just remove one of the sway bar in-link bolts. So we're going to do that. So, got my 17 on the nut, Allen key to hold it. Okay, that's not working. I'm gonna get the impact and hit that, try to loosen it, and then we'll break it. Having a 3/4 drive impact is so handy sometimes. Having that compactness really helps in situations like this. Damn, she's on there, boys. Well, there we go. Like frickin' butter. Basically one hit from the BFI and it worked. Gotta pull that sway bar down a little bit to get that in-link out. She's pretty cockeyed. There we go. All right, so that's that. Nice and easy. Can't really see it, but the in-link is right here, nice and loose. So the strut assembly bolts on the front end are 19 on one side and 17 on the other, but on the back, they're 19 on both sides. Why you gotta be doing me like that, Toyota? Crazy little thin bolt, that's wild. All right, now we gotta go in the car, so gonna get my clean hands back on and try to get to the top mounts. So I don't know if this is fairly common, but this is nearly identical, it seems, to my E46, where to get the rear bench out, you simply just pull up, and there's like evidently these tabs somewhere. Felt like I broke it, but it was just a strong tab. There it is. This is a good opportunity to clean in here. Look at how filthy this seat is. Oh my gosh. See what other kind of JDM loot we can find in here. More money. 100, 201 yen. How much is this? 1 yen. Boys, I'm making money on this car. Holy shit. Wow. All right, so Panasonic battery. That's officially a JDM battery. That's pretty epic. All right, and then the rear seat comes out apparently with some bolts hidden behind some things. Yeah, like right there. Uno. Dos. Three. Or trace. Just realized I don't know how to count in Japanese, so here we are. Dude, A 50 yen coin. That's crazy. It's got a hole in the middle. Like I said, I made money on this car officially now. Okay, so our bottom part is loose, as you can see. Now I think we just got to get the headrest out. There's a couple of bolts behind there, and then that little upper dash part pops up, and then we can get to our shocks. Look at how neatly hidden our little cute bolt is. I was gonna say, I've never had a car that you had to disassemble the interior components to get to the upper strut mounts, but that's not true. My E46 is a wagon, and you have to take a lot of the back end apart. So this is, hopefully, as long as we don't run into any more issues, this is a hell of a lot easier. And I don't know if this can just kind of chill. Maybe we have one more. Do we have some more hidden in here? Ah, yes. One more in the center console right there. So check this out. You can just kind of lean this forward, and then inside of the car, your struts are right in there. So we just got to remove this little top cover, and then we can get to the actual strut bolts. So that's not bad. But now I don't have a place to put my little tripod. So you're just gonna have to imagine what it's like to get that little cover off. Never really used this right-handed guy that I have, but it seems like it's gonna come in handy this time. All right, so just a couple of 14 bolts to get our little cover top hat assembly off. And now there is our shock, our strut. Boom, baby. That right-handed guy did come in serious handy. So now we should just be able to, according to the internets, take out that bottom bolt and our strut should just come right out. All right, let's give this a little go. So let's try to tap out our bolt here. Got some strain on this here bolt. There we go. That was easy. So, oh, you can see it. It just fell like that. All I did was just take my little Allen, pry it down a little bit, and it let the bolt go. So now, this whole assembly should just come out, according to the onlines. But how? Ah, there we go. Does it all fit through there? No way. Just like this. Boom, baby. Wow. I am so pleasantly surprised at that. There's the RSR for our rear, so we really do have RSR lowering springs all the way around. And just like that, oh man, the boot is in bad shape. I don't have rear boots that look usable, so I'm gonna have to buy those again, but yes, baby, we got this out. Okay, so here is the side-by-side of our rear struts and springs. Right side, of course, being the OEM one. Left side is the RSR. And then in both cases, the bushings just look absolutely ruined in the bottom, but we're gonna send it with the OEM strut and see how it feels. Time for the OEM, even though it has a just absolutely destroyed boot. That makes me so sad. I don't even really want to put this on. This is so insanely destroyed. I've got to get a new one, but I want to get this one on, so let's just go ahead and do it. Now, which way does our holes line up? So if we have this one here, looks like it's going to go in this way, like that. Let's go ahead and try that again. So this just kind of went in here like that. I'll play with these angles a bit. There we go, that wasn't bad. And then this one up in here. Gotta get this higher. Okay, the top shock bolts are in. So now the challenge is gonna be, you can see the bottom of the strut there and the hole we need to line it up to there. So I think I'm gonna have to kind of pry down on the whole assembly again and then stick that bolt in there basically as soon as I can. So this is gonna be pretty tough. Oh man, if I look like I'm beat up, that lower, I just can't even speak. That lower bolt was so difficult to get in. I had to pry down on the suspension to get the control arms and stuff low enough to make the bolt line up. Then I had to go get a different bolt for the other side, so once I got it to line up, it would at least stay there, so then I could fight in the bolt from the proper side over here. Oh, that was so tough. Boom, baby. As much as that sucked, that officially means I only have one more left. Learned my lesson a little bit, so hopefully the other side goes a bit smoother, and then we can put this beast on the ground and go take it for a spin. Oh my Lord have mercy, this side sucked even more. I think that bushing on the bottom of the shock is twisted, and holy crap, I had to pry, twist, push all at the same time. This better be worth it. I'm gonna be so bummed if this makes it worse or not any better, because I've spent hours on this. This one corner took me over an hour. I'm like ashamed to admit it, but like I said, this better be worth it. Well, I officially have all 4 RSRs out. That was absolutely terrible in the rear end. The front was honestly a breeze. Once I figured out I just had to break that upper control arm ball joint loose, that was easy. The rears were absolutely god-awful. And the only reason I can surmise why is because these bushings just didn't wear on, you know, the car. Like, those parts are from somebody else's car, and these are from this one. So this one is gonna kind of have the, you know, the wear and sort of the fitment that, that our car is going to have. So I think that's probably why. Didn't make it any less terrible. I'm hoping that when I put, you know, all the brand new components on, that it will be a hell of a lot easier. I don't really have any worries about the front, but man, if the rears are even half as difficult as that's going to be pretty terrible. But now that the sun is setting, we can go ahead and get the wheels back on and go take this thing for a test drive. I am really, really excited. I'm gonna go around and make sure that I have all the bolts torqued down that I've messed with, because it's been so many hours. I think I did, but I wanna make sure. So I just realized you guys are gonna get to see the fitment, or maybe the reverse fitment here, because we're going back to stock. Before I actually get to see it, I gotta put the car back down. So you're gonna get to see how it looks with that new suspension. And here's a shot from earlier today when it still had the old lowering springs on it. And then let's go ahead and take a look at today. Wow. I know that the front is still up in the air, but that gap is huge. Woohoo, look at that. That's funny, I don't know if you just saw that. Did it just totally break? Uh-oh. So I want to try something else, which is I bought those ramps because, like I said, with those lowering springs, I couldn't get my jack under the front of the car. So I'm going to try lowering it down without the ramps. Worst case, I have to lift it back up, but I just want to see if that makes the difference. So, like, overall, I mean, obviously that's massive wheel gap for any of us that like lowered cars and sport suspension and stuff. But in this particular case, I think it just looks right. Like, it's a gigantic wheel gap. Let's look. Oh, it's so massive, but it just looks right. I mean, I think I'm a fan. It just looks like how it should from the factory. So let's go ahead and just make sure all the wheels are torqued down, and then let's go for a drive. Go ahead and put the finishing touches on here. Boom, baby. Good morning, fam. It's a new day. I ran out of daylight yesterday, and I wanted to take the test drive in the daytime, and this is gonna be my first reaction. I haven't driven it yet, so let's go ahead and rumble onto the coffee shop. So, first reactions, how fast are we going? 80 kph. It feels really smooth. It definitely feels more pleasant, and like it's absorbing more bumps than the RSR springs. Like, this road is pretty smooth, but there's still little undulations in it, and it feels like it's absorbing them pretty much perfectly. So I'm excited to try and feel like some actual bumps and some more, you know, like intense roads. There's a few spots around town that are very particularly bumpy and have like big dips in the road, so we'll go find those and check it out. Got the goods. Let's keep test driving. So this is gonna be kind of a hard thing to demonstrate, and it's a little bit subjective, but if I have the wheel cut all the way to the right, like if I'm making a hard turn or a U-turn like this, and then I let the wheel go, it'll not even really gradually return to center. It just kind of slowly fades its way back to center. But on those lowering springs, the last like kind of quarter turn would just be like, whoa, just would whip the wheel back. So I don't know if that's just like a suspension geometry, kind of like misalignment sort of thing. But man, that's a really pleasant, like just quality of driving comfort fix that these shocks have given us. This bridge has a bunch of weird, like kind of U-shaped pieces to it, so you're constantly like floating up and down. You can kind of see my hand just sort of going with the motions, and this is way, way, way improved over those lowering springs. This is much better. Still not like, you know, flat and level, but it's still much better. And that bump, that last final bump, is way better. So now what we're gonna do is go test a couple more spots and go test some speed bumps. Oh, it's so much better. So much better. That spot back there typically made the whole thing go boom. That's what I was talking about, where it felt like the suspension was just totally blown out, is in those big kind of like high speed dips. You just feel like you're bottoming out. Next up is our roundabout test. How much body roll we got now? There was still a fair bit before, but now there's gonna be even more. This Passat just got in the way. Ooh, yeah, baby, we leaning. I don't know that it's any more necessarily than any other kind of just standard, typical stock car, but it's pretty good. These little slimy slime balls right here, these yellow speed bumps, were vicious before. You have to go so slow over them. Oh, it's not even close to banging. But man, in the old suspension, I would bottom out and scrape on some of these. I had to go so slow, really annoying, and that's fixed. Awesome. The other bad news bears was these really big tabletop speed bumps, because you like bottom out in the center and we're all good there. Those tabletop type speed bumps are probably those ones that we saw under the car when we did the transmission bushing and all the scrapes in the exhaust pipe. And the final test for today is right across this little tiny bridge thingy. There's a really big dip and you end up hitting this at like 50 miles an hour roughly. It's so much better. Even just the thing like right at the beginning where the road kind of connects to the bridge and you have that thunk, that not only sounds better, but it also just like feels more pleasant. So this is great. So with that test drive, I would say that this was definitely a success. In terms of improvement, it's not like it's night and day, but it definitely is better in any situation that's not just a flat road. So the things that bothered me the most were the fact that when I would go over speed bumps, you would bottom out pretty much always, which is really annoying because in a car like this, I don't want to have to be like planning my route and like going and skipping certain parking lots and that sort of thing. And then just for general driving experience, I bought this car because I wanted to experience what this UCF20 platform is all about. This Celsior and of course the LS400 are just renowned for their ride quality and comfort, so I wanted to experience what that's like, and like I mentioned earlier in the video, doing it in gradual improvements. So with this return to OEM shocks and struts, next time we're going to do a whole front suspension overhaul, new struts. So we're going to get the struts and the springs back out and put brand new ones on, and then just feel what that's like. Later in another video, we're going to do the whole rear suspension. So if you're excited to see this car get restored to OEM factory fresh, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you so much for your support. It's really awesome to see all of you guys joining the channel with me. Look forward to seeing you in the next one.